In the spring of 1775, Boston was a hotbed of tension. Colonists, upset with British rule and taxation, were now preparing for military conflict with the ruling British Army, and British troops were stationed in the city, ready to engage with any rebellion. On the night of April 18th, colonial patriot and silversmith Paul Revere received warning that British troops were headed inland to the towns of Lexington and Concord, likely aiming to disarm local patriots and capture their leaders. It was up to Revere and his fellow patriots to ride through the night ahead of the British Army and warn them of the incoming troops. Would they be able to save the cause of liberty? The only way to find out was to go for a ride. Paul Revere's Midnight Ride is cemented into American history and culture, particularly here in New England. Henry Wadsworth Longfellow's 1861 poem about the ride helped keep the story in the American public consciousness, even if it took quite a bit of artistic license with historical events. Today, there is a published driving route if you want to recreate Revere's perilous journey from Boston to Lexington. But if you don't own a car, it turns out you can also replicate most of the Midnight Ride on MBTA buses. So listen, my child, and hear the tale of the daytime ride of Classy Whale. So we begin here at Back Bay Station, where we just got off the commuter rail, and we'll be catching the Orange Line up to the North End, where we begin Paul Revere's Midnight Ride. But
listen, my children, and you shall hear of the perilous ride of us two here.
We jump on board the Orange Line and ride at a few stops north to Haymarket, where we walk through a farmer's market and over the Big Dig to reach Boston's North End. It's here we find Paul Revere's house. Built in 1680, it's the oldest home in downtown Boston. Today, it's a museum, but you can't film in there. So instead, we go to the famous Mike's Pastry for cannolis and swing by Old North Church. This was where colonists had set up a warning system with lanterns for British troop movements. 1 cannoli if by land and 2 if by sea. We walk back through the North End to get our first bus, the 92, which will take us across the Charles River and up through Charleston to Sullivan Square Station on the Orange Line. The bus arrives and we take off to the north, running across the Charles River. In 1775, Paul Revere had to make a much quieter crossing here, in a boat with muffled oars, as crossings were banned at that hour of the night. It was here in Charleston that Paul Revere was provided with a horse and set off. Charleston has been part of Boston since 1874, and today is home to about 16,000 people. Between the dense buildings, one can spot the Bunker Hill Memorial, commemorating the Revolutionary War battle that took place on Breed's Hill. Long story there. After a few minutes, we make it to Sullivan Square, a stop on the Orange Line and our first transfer. It's here we finally enjoy our cannolis.
That is very good, and I wish we had gotten napkins.
Next we jump on the 101, which will take us to Medford. It was around this point in the journey that Revere was ambushed by 2 British officers, but he managed to evade them. Our route heads through Somerville, population 81,000, before crossing the Mystic River into Medford, population 59,000. Paul Revere would have ridden right through this town, waking up patriots along the way, but our bus transfer is an hour, so we get some tasty Japanese food, something Paul Revere probably had no concept of, as Japan was closed off to most foreigners in 1775. We also find a graveyard with stones that would have been there when Paul Revere rode by. If you're enjoying this video, do consider supporting me on Patreon for more exciting transit-related nonsense. Next up is the 95, which will take us from here in Medford all the way to Arlington. It's important to note that while Paul Revere is known for shouting, "The British are coming," as he rode, he never actually said this. Instead, he shouted, "The regulars are coming out," as both the troops and colonists would have thought of themselves as British at that time. As Paul Revere sounded the alarm, many patriots saddled up to spread the word of the troops' advance further. Besides being home to 46,000 people, Arlington also has several statues of horses, painted in different patterns, a small section of the train track that used to run all the way to Lexington, and the home of Cyrus Edwin Dallin, who sculpted the famous Paul Revere statue in the North End. Dallin was 23 when he was awarded the honor of making the sculpture in 1885, but it wasn't until 1940 that the statue was completed. Truly the California high-speed rail of monuments. The 77 bus will take us up Massachusetts Avenue to the Arlington Heights Busway, a transfer station. I've always imagined Paul Revere's ride taking place through rural Massachusetts countryside, but today the entire route is either urban or suburban. I wonder what Mr. Revere would think of it all. He did work on building ships later in his life, so I think he would have really enjoyed the buses we're riding. The Arlington Heights Busway serves as a transfer between multiple different local bus routes. It used to have a station building, but now that's closed off to the public. Our last bus is the 62 up to Lexington. As we roll through the early spring afternoon, we pass the Scottish Rite Masonic Museum and Library and arrive in the town of Lexington. The bus takes us past Lexington Green, and we get off, heading for the Hancock-Clark House. This was Paul Revere's destination. Here he met with Patriot leaders John Hancock and Samuel Adams to strategize about next steps. Word was subsequently sent out that the British troops were on their way, and Revere continued west to warn Concord, only to be captured by the British Army at a location that's not on the MBTA bus network. Revere was returning towards Lexington with the troops when shots rang out from the town. The first battle of the Revolutionary War had begun on Lexington Green as patriots, rallied by Paul Revere and his fellow riders, turned out to oppose the British. The cause of liberty had reached a tipping point, and there was no going back now.
A voice in the darkness, a knock at the door, and a word that shall echo forevermore. All of you watching this now without fail shall subscribe on this day to watch Classy Whale.